2330. That's Bashir Sawmill, family owned and operated in Princeton for over 50 years.
Time now is 9:44. You're listening to your local hometown radio station, WPKY 103.3 FM The Tiger. And I'm back with Todd Griffin for a slightly delayed sideline report. Just a bit, Todd.
Well, unfortunately, technology, it's great when it works, and when it doesn't work,
we have been defeated by the mixing board. Unfortunately, we won't have Kevin on. We apologize to Kevin. We were looking forward to hearing from him this morning. Maybe we can reschedule him for a different morning. But
I hope so. Kevin Patton does a great job up at the Henderson Gleaner covering sports, and he's kind of from this area anyway, so good friend, and again, does a great job up there, and I hate that we couldn't get him on this morning because he was going to give us some great information on the Henderson County Colonels. I'll try to make up for that a little bit. Henderson County will be at Tiger Stadium Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff. It's a big game for the Tigers because it's the last game before district play starts. So, the Caldwell County offense has kind of struggled a little bit at times this year. More so in the red zone than anything. As far as putting up yardage, the Tigers have been pretty good at moving the football, but have had some issues in the red zone, have had some turnover issues, and this week's game is going to be a big chance for the Tigers to see if they've fixed some of those things, because I really think the Tiger football team is really, really close to being really, really good. It's just got to fix a few problems, and when you look at the team is averaging around 350 yards of offense a game, but only about 21 points a game. With that much offense, it probably should be averaging about 35 points a game, and if the Tigers had put up a few more points here or there, they might be 4-0 instead of 2-2. Henderson County is 3-1 on the season. The Colonels with a big win over Gibson Southern last week up in Indiana, 23-0. First time in several years that Gibson Southern has, even lost a regular season game, and I think since 2011, since they suffered a shutout loss, so pretty big deal for the Henderson County team and the defense there. Henderson County offensively likes to run the football quite a bit. It's going to be a big test for the Tiger defense. The good thing, though, is when they face Paducah-Tillman next week in that first district game, Tillman also likes to run the ball a whole lot. It's a little different setup. They do some different things, but a lot more run-heavy than some teams, so that's going to give the Tigers at least a decent look at, trying to stop that run game next week. So Henderson County probably shows up on the schedule in a pretty good spot for the Tigers. Henderson County, though, like I said, 3-1. They lost their opener, but have won 3 straight since then. The Litkin House ratings in the Courier-Journal really like the Colonels. Henderson right now with a rating of 122.6. That's good enough for 12th overall in the state and is 5th in Class 6A. Caldwell County's ranking was 98.1, which is 9th in 3A, which is still pretty good. But, that makes the Colonels about, what is the math? They're about 24 points ahead of Caldwell. So that's a pretty big difference. But I would like to point out, since we're honoring the 1998 state champs this week, that when they went into that state championship game up in Louisville in 1998 against Danville was about a 26 or a 27-point favorite, and the Tigers end up winning that game 38-28. So
maybe history will repeat itself.
So, ratings are great, but sometimes not the most accurate of all indicators, so we'll see how that goes Friday. I really think if the Tiger offense can get some things figured out, that the Tigers will be okay. I think this will be a pretty close game this week at Tiger Stadium. I think there'll be a big turnout from the Caldwell County fans, especially since the 98 team is going to be honored. I don't know that we'll see the Henderson County sideline quite as packed as what Crittenden County did last week.
Hey, that was a good game.
It was, and they had a bunch of people here, and I think that side of the stadium was full about 6:15.
Yeah, they filled up. They filled up the track. They really came. Just the other end of Highway 91. So
the sideline bleachers didn't hold that crowd. I mean, like you said, they were packed on both sides of the track, and it was about 4 or 5 people deep. So I think they made a really good gate that game, so that was probably good for the Caldwell County athletic department budget.
Yeah, as a whole, I'm sure.
But I think Henderson County will bring a good crowd. I mean, it's an easy trip down the interstate, and a lot of people are looking forward to hitting Polly Eyes or one of the other local establishments before the game.
And the weather, the weather's supposed to be fantastic that day. Right now the forecast is, mostly clear with lows around 67. I mean, that's perfect football weather. That's all that you can ask for.
One of the largest schools in the state, certainly one of the largest ones in this end, with McCracken County right there too, I think. The Tigers have had some success against Henderson. The Tigers lead the all-time series 10-4. Caldwell County has won the last 3 straight since they started getting back together. You have to understand, though, there was a long time where they didn't play. Henderson's last win came in 1971. So that kind of shows you.
It's been a bit.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they played, and Henderson kind of got on the schedule because the Tigers were in a bit of a bind and couldn't find anybody. I don't think that Coach Barnes would like to have so many games against so many bigger schools, but it's kind of worked out that way. You look early in the season, you have Christian County and Graves County, and those schools are 5A schools. Then you look at Hopkinsville, that's a 4A school, has been 5A in the past, so that's a bigger school. Henderson County 6A. Crittenden County is only a 1A school, but that's a school that was ranked in the top 10 in 1A and came in undefeated.
Yeah.
So when you look at the schedule, it's been an absolute killer so far for the Tigers, and those can go either way. You can play that tough early season schedule, and it can really make you better and toughen you up a little bit and get you ready for the rest of the schedule, or you can not have some success, and it really hurts you later on because it really hurts your confidence, and then you're spending the rest of the season trying to bounce back. The last few years, I think it's really helped. It hasn't been that long. I think it was 2 years ago the Tigers started 0-3, ended up 8-5, and in the regional championship game. So I think the schedule, playing those difficult teams, has helped. I think by and large it's been a good thing, but it's always sort of a risky proposition when you go into that and you realize that every week it's just good team after good team after good team. The Tigers really haven't had one of those games where they could relax and just have an easy win.
It's nice. I like this 3 home game streak. Oh, yeah. That's always nice.
Yeah, 3 straight home games and 5 of 6. The Tigers will go to Paducah Tillman next week, and again, that's a big Class 3A First District clash. Tillman looking really good right now, will probably be favored in that game by a little bit. The Tigers have beaten Tillman the last 3 years, though, just like they've beaten Henderson the last 3, and that game's probably for the district championship. I say probably because Union County moved into the rankings this week at number 10, so the Braves may have a say in everything before it's all said and done, but I think most observers in Western Kentucky would say that that Caldwell-Tillman winner is probably going to win the district and get some home games in the playoffs out of that, so that's going to be a big game next week, and that's what you're really looking at if you're a Caldwell County fan this week, is the Tigers just trying to play well and get better. Yes, as we always say, everybody always wants to win.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean,
that's why we're playing the game. You play to win, as Herm Edwards would say. But the Tigers just need a really good game this week, and if they don't come out on the plus side, that's unfortunate. But they need to play well and do some good things, get ready for that Paducah Tillman game next week.
Yeah.
And after that, the schedule, Union County, the aforementioned Braves, come to town the week after the Paducah Tillman game. So,
and then we got another run of home games after that.
Yeah, play Union County here and then Trigg County here, which is a big rival game. So, like I said, there's just no breaks on the Tiger football schedule this year. You look at the end, you have to go to Fort Campbell, which is a tough place to play. The Falcons have struggled the last few years after, it hasn't been that long since they won 3 straight championships. And then finished the year at Mayfield, so it's a pretty difficult slate. Yeah. But 7 o'clock is kickoff Friday night. Again, we're going to honor the 1998 state championship team at halftime. That team went 14-1. The only loss was to Marshall County. And I remember that game. And actually, I found this book. It's called.
Yeah, I noticed you got that out. I wondered what you were looking at.
It's called 100 Years of Tiger Football.
Yeah.
And it's got some really good stuff in it. And I'm pretty sure you can still pick up a copy at the Times Leader, and they might cut you a deal if you want a copy or 10.
Look at that. I like that little plug right there.
So run by the office if you'd like a copy. I was just checking out the 1998 team, and I still remember a lot of these games. It's really difficult to believe that this was 20 years ago.
Time flies.
That we were all up at Old Cardinal Stadium on the real hard old turf, and playing football and beating Danville 38-28. And I tweeted that this week, and our buddy Larry Vaught, who worked for the Danville paper back then.
I saw that. Yeah, I like to follow your Twitter feed.
I actually posted that was still one of the most bitter defeats, one of the toughest ones to swallow for Danville. And
I'd say,
there was a lot of ties in that game. The trainer for Caldwell County a few years back, she was actually a manager on that Danville team. Josh Jaggers, who's the coach now up at LaRue County, was a member of that Danville team. So there's some actual ties between the two communities there going back to that. And again, Danville was just a huge favorite. Caldwell was sort of the little team that could and ended up being the little team that did.
Yeah.
And 38-28, I still remember Gerald Fuqua picking up that ball on the punt when I think Danville, I couldn't understand if they were trying to run a fake punt or what was going on, but the punter, they lined up in punt formation, and the punter headed toward the sideline, and I guess the center didn't get the word that, they were changing plays or running something different. He snapped the ball, and the ball is just laying on the ground.
Yeah.
And the next thing, Gerald Fuqua comes in, swoops it up, and runs for a touchdown, and that really helped swing the momentum in that game, and the Tigers went on to win it. But, I mean, just everybody made big plays that game. I remember the Tigers falling behind early, and you were thinking, well, it was great to get to the state championship game, but maybe it's not our day.
Yeah.
But they were able to get that turned around, and not really the first time they did that. That was one of those teams that, they kind of realized that in sports, especially against a really good opponent, you're not going to make every play.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always going to go your way. The other team is going to be good, and they're going to make plays. But that team just kept fighting and kept fighting. And I remember back to the regional championship game that year was against Hancock County. And the Tigers had beaten Hancock County, I think, the year before in the playoffs. And if you watched any of the Evansville news stations before that week, you saw all the players from Hancock County saying they were going to go back to Caldwell County and get a little revenge for that game.
I know you were saying that. I think last week's Sideline Report, talking about your top 10 games.
Yeah. So that was a pretty big deal that they all kept saying, we're going to get back at them this year. This is our year. We're going to get some revenge at Caldwell County. And they came down here, and Travis Atwell was the quarterback, and that kid could really play. And the first two times Hancock County had the football, they went down the field and scored. They led 7-0, and they led 14-7. And at that point, everybody on the sidelines kind of looking at each other like, are we going to stop this team?
Yeah.
But the Tiger defense finally made some plays. The offense really didn't get stopped. The Tigers rolled up big yardage and went on to win that game 60-30. And I think that was probably the biggest crowd I've ever seen at Tiger Stadium. The only bigger crowd might have been the Mayfield game, whatever it was, 3 or 4 years ago now, where both teams were ranked number 1 in the state.
Oh, yeah.
And the Tigers ended up winning that game 48-41. So those crowds were tremendous, even bigger than the crowd we had here last week when Crittenden County brought all the folks.
We're always good at turning out.
Yeah, the Tigers sideline or side of the field last week, it wasn't quite as full until after the game started. I thought it filled in a little bit after kickoff. But right before the game, it didn't look quite as full as I've seen it in the past. So, we need to do a better job of Caldwell County fans getting out to Tiger Stadium on Friday nights and making that place an intimidating place to play.
And, too, I think one reason people may be staying away is because of the parking situation. But
Right.
it really isn't that as bad as it could be. I mean, they've really got some stuff set up to account for all the construction there at the ATC. So.
Well, and if worst comes to worst, just parked out of the primary school.
That's what I did.
Walk up, and it's a bit of a walk, but it's not too bad.
It's exercise. Reward yourself. Get a cheeseburger once you get to the top.
And the great thing is, when you get back down to your car and pull out, you've missed all the traffic trying to get around the school.
This is true.
And you're out of there pretty quick. So to me, that's a pretty easy solution to that problem.
Yeah,
but it is a little difficult getting up and around the school right now.
Which I saw that they had a lot of parking down at the tennis courts last
there's
time.
some down there, and you can actually pull around behind the tennis courts and park over in the grass area and the grass area behind the field house. So That's what all the Crittenden County people did last week.
Yeah, yeah.
So in 2 years, when Crittenden County comes back, I'm going to be out there with a sign that says $5 parking.
Yeah.
We'll make a little extra money on them that way.
Hey, there you go.
But that was fun. I mean, last week was a fun game.
It was. It's a little bit of a nail biter at times.
Even bigger if you were a Tiger fan. The Tigers able to pull that one out, and that's a really good Crittenden County team. People think about them being a small school, and Caldwell County has kind of dominated that rivalry, at least in recent memory. But that was a good Crittenden County team, and I think that's a Crittenden County team that has a chance to go 9-1 during the regular season. I think they have a chance to,
as long as we're the one loss.
Yeah, I think they have a chance to play in the playoffs for a long time. Maybe even get back in that regional championship game. Maybe go to the state semifinals, and once you get to there, I mean, anything's possible if you get on a run. That's sort of what the '98 Tigers did. They got in the playoffs and made a run, and just so many memories looking back through 100 years of Tiger football.
That's one way to feel. Yeah. That's one way to feel. Airspace
But just all those games. Caldwell County had lost to Edmonson County a couple of years earlier in the playoffs. Here came Edmonson County again in the second round that year, and the Tigers beat them 16-0 at Tiger Stadium. Mentioned the Hancock County game, which was just an incredible atmosphere. Wish could go back to that game just because, I almost remember that game and how much fun that was as much as the state championship game. I think because that regional championship game, it was just that game and you're trying to advance, and the state championship, there's so many nerves, and, it's so nerve-wracking because it is the state championship that sometimes it's difficult to try to enjoy those things, but certainly we enjoyed it more after we had the win.
Yeah. It's funny how that works out, isn't it?
The state semifinal that year was at Bullitt East, and they were really good. And, that was another trip up the Parkway. And I remember going up there, and the best thing about walking up to the stadium that night was you looked at the Bullitt East side, and there was all kinds of people, and they had a big crowd, and they were playing music really loud, and they were jazzed. And you looked at the Caldwell County sideline, and there were more people on the visitor side of the field that night than there was on the home side. And I remember, again, they did it all up, and they had lasers and smoke and everything, and, the loud music when the team came out. I think their team ran out onto the field and looked at that Caldwell County crowd on the sideline, and I think it had a negative effect on them.
Hey, wherever we go, we bring our home game advantage with us, with the crowd.
Bullitt East is all fired up about, hey, we got a home game, and we're going to try to get to the next round. And when you come out of your own locker room through your own smoke, and you walk onto the field and you see a bigger crowd on the sideline than what you've got, I think that definitely had an effect. And the Tigers ran out to the lead early in that game, grabbed control of it. It ended up being 28-13, but I don't really feel like the Tigers were ever in that much danger in that game. And I think crowd support was a big part of that, and the fact that the Tigers were really, really good.
It's like when we went back to state. What year was it? It's recently.
2012.
Yeah, and we were at the Hilltoppers. We went to Western.
Western.
That was, I'll tell you, we drove down, some friends of mine. We drove down we were all at college at UK, and we decided to make the trip. And that was another example. We had if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure we were well represented at that game.
Yeah, always taking a good crowd. And, it seems like there's a more boisterous Tiger following on the road sometimes than what we have at Tiger Stadium.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, and maybe we've gotten spoiled. Maybe that's part of it, that, we had the run with the quarterbacks and, Elijah Sindelar, and all those receivers and the big offensive line and Jalen Boyd at running back. And the Tigers came out and put up so many yards on offense and put up such crazy numbers scoring that maybe we all got a little complacent and a little, again, spoiled.
Yeah.
That, if you don't see 50 points or 60 points scored in the first half every game, everybody's like, well, what's the problem? And I'm like, there's not any problem. It's just football. It's just not natural to go out and score 60 points a game. And that team, again, was really good offensively, especially, and had a lot of good players. And, and maybe the schedule wasn't quite as tough back then as it is now either. So maybe that's part of it. But I really think this Tiger football team, as I keep saying, has a chance to be really, really good. I think when the playoffs roll around, it could get back to the regional championship game and has a chance to go on to that state semifinal. And then who knows? You're a win away from playing for the state championship. But it does have to fix a few things, and we'll get another chance Friday night to see if they've worked on some things and got those things taken care of.
That's the way to think about it. You're only one win away from the next step.
I mean,
then before you know it, you got all the way to the top.
The season is long, and you don't play well from the very first snap of the season to the very last snap of the season. But at some point during the year, you want to get on that roll and build on it and build on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Tigers are looking to do. I think the pieces are there. It just hasn't quite all come together on offense yet. Now, the defense has played pretty well, maybe even better than expected. But the offense just hasn't. Again, you see them move the ball, but then there's a penalty that stops a drive, or they have a turnover that kills them. I know against Crittenden County the other night, the Tigers made a big stand against Crittenden County. Crittenden County went for it at its own 20, didn't make it, and the Tigers take over. Great shape. You're taking over in the red zone, and the next play the Tigers turn it over. Well, you just can't do that. If the other team is going to be to the point that they're going to go for it at their own 20, and you make a stop, you've got to make that hurt. You have to take that ball, and you have to put that in the end zone, put 7 points on the board, and make them pay for doing that. And the Tigers just aren't quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but maybe. I mean, it's coming.
Yeah, lots of opportunity. So what else you got, Todd?
Well, I was going to say 7 o'clock kickoff, and the 1998 state championship team, I think they want those people to all come over around the field house and come in by the gate there where the Tiger dressing room is.
And I think they want them there a little early for they got some pregame stuff set up.
We're going to honor them. I believe they all get in free. So,
yeah, that's the reason to go over to the field house. I think you get in free if you go in over at the field house. And they got a space, roped off for them as well. So
that's all players, coaches, managers, cheerleaders, anybody associated with the team back then.
And their families as well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
come back, and I expect that to be a tremendous ovation at halftime. I mean, you're talking about state championships that don't roll around just every day. We've got 2 of them, and I'm here to tell you that Caldwell County is very fortunate to have the success it has had through the years. You go back to 1963 for the Class 2A state champs, and then the 98 state championship team, and then state runner-up not too long ago. I'm telling you, a lot of schools don't have that. People want to look at Mayfield and say, well, look at all their championships. Well, or Danville even, and those are special instances. Not everybody has that. There's some schools that don't have any state championships in anything.
Yeah.
And here we're talking about 2 state championships in football. Emma Talley's a 3-time state champion golfer. We kind of take those things for granted sometimes, and we don't need to because those are big.
Yeah, they really are. We have a very successful history when it comes to athletics.
But just a lot going on in sports this week. Wanted to mention the Western Kentucky All-Century basketball team was announced this week. Dwight Smith, who played at Princeton Dotson, probably the best basketball player to come from this community, was on that team. And Carlisle Towery, who played at Shady Grove, just across the county line over in Crittenden County, was also on that team. So to me, that's pretty good representation on the All-Century basketball team. There's only 15 players on that, and we're going to call both of those local players because Carlisle Towery was a big kid, about 6'5", played back in the 1930s, and when he was in high school, they still had the center jump after every basket.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you had a big kid, 6'5" was really, really tall back then. Well, you could win that jump every time, and they dominated some people and won the regional championship while he was there. I'm sure there were a lot of Caldwell Countyans who went to school at Shady Grove back in the day who lived out in the northern part of the county, and went to Western, was a 2-time All-American, was the first Hilltopper to score 1,000 career points.
Really?
Keeping in mind that this was the late 30s and early 40s.
It's a little harder to score points back then.
Basketball teams scored 30 or 40 points a game back then, not 70 or 80 or 90 like they do now. So he was the first 1,000-point scorer at Western Kentucky. And Dwight Smith was just, the best. I mean, Played at Princeton Dotson. His senior year, they won the regional championship. He went to Western and had an outstanding career. Would have been an outstanding player in the NBA, maybe one of the best ever. Unfortunately, that his life was cut short tragically right after, doing all those great things at Western Kentucky. And certainly, when you speak of legendary players, not just here, but, he's on that legendary list at Western Kentucky as well. So if you get a chance to go online, check out the All-Century basketball team. Just some great players at Western Kentucky overall, but certainly I'm tickled to death to see Dwight Smith on there. Why his jersey doesn't hang in the rafters at Diddle Arena, I will never know. That needs to get done. I get on Chris George all the time because he's up there all the time. I call him the mayor of Western Kentucky University.
Hey, there you go.
I'm like, you got to get Dwight's jersey. And I don't know. I don't think Dwight ever made All-American while he was at Western, and maybe that's part of the issue. I'm just trying to look for a reason. I think there are
You start the petition, Todd.
I think there are 8 jerseys, basketball players, that hang in Diddle. Maybe a Hilltopper fan could correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think the one thing those players all share is that they were All-Americans, and so maybe that's the difference. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. But Dwight was on some of the greatest teams that Western ever had, and just an outstanding ball player. As a matter of fact, if you go back and look in the Western stat book and you look at the rebounding leaders through the years, for each year, there was a 4-year run where the leading rebounder for the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers was a Smith. One year it was Dwight Smith. The next year it was his brother Greg Smith. Then it was Dwight Smith again, and then it was Greg. And Dwight was a guard.
Yeah.
And he twice led Western in rebounding. He was averaging double-doubles, and, again, those were some really great basketball teams. And, again, when you throw out the word legend, sometimes maybe we use it too much, but Dwight Smith is a legendary high school and college basketball player and probably would have been a legendary professional basketball player.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I've actually got a Smith story. And, when I was younger, I didn't really know about the Smiths. It was a little before my time.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually, would buy, trading cards, baseball, basketball, football, whatever. Was actually looking at the back of a basketball card one time because, being a sports geek, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Or I still do. But I actually remember turning that card around, and it said, hometown, Princeton, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for a kid from Princeton, Kentucky who didn't know any better, that was a pretty big shock,
yeah.
To see Princeton, Kentucky in the back. So I'm asking, who's this Greg Smith? And that's when people will start telling me, well, the Smiths, played at Dotson. Greg played at Caldwell County his senior year, and not surprisingly, after consolidation, which Dotson won the regional championship its last year as a school, and then the next year, after consolidation, Caldwell County won its only regional championship. So, that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And but I always remember looking at the back of that card and seeing, hometown Princeton, Kentucky, and just
hometown pride,
mind blown.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a big deal, and I saw that and wanted to mention that team. And Jalen Boyd with a big game, back to football, up at Lindsey Wilson last week, 96 yards rushing, a 30-yard touchdown, a big win for Lindsey Wilson, and Jalen did that all on 8 carries. And if you get a chance, go to my Twitter or Facebook page, and his dad actually did some video of that, and you can go back and watch Jalen carry the ball and hear his dad get fired up about it. You have to listen to it. Turn the sound up when you watch the video. It's best with sound up, and you can actually see Jalen, getting in the open and making some moves, and it's just like old times at Caldwell County. And Jalen's a junior for the Blue Raiders and has another year to go, so I think he's going to put up some big numbers for them too.
Lots of opportunities still.
Coming up this weekend, it's Commonwealth Week in college football. Murray State's at Kentucky on Saturday, and Western Kentucky goes to Louisville. I'm not sure who planned that out, but it worked out great. And if you're really fired up about it, you can actually make both games because the UK Murray game is at 11 o'clock Saturday morning. That's on the SEC Network alternate channel, so that better show up on DirecTV.
Yeah. I would check with your TV provider now.
But it's the alternate channel for the SEC network that you can, Murray. Western Kentucky and Louisville are going to play in the Ville at 6:30 Saturday night. That's an ACC network game, but I believe you'll be able to see it on Fox Sports South and Fox Sports Midwest. But again, with one game at 11 and one at 6:30,
more than enough time.
If you're really fired up about it, you could get to Kroger Field, and
that's what I was going to ask. So UK's hosting, Murray.
Yeah, so you could get to Kroger Field, and then you could get to Cardinal Stadium, whatever we're calling it now, since we took Papa John's
out of it. The stadium.
Yeah, the stadium. So that's going to be a big game, and you're actually going to need, if you're watching on TV, you're going to need a couple of TVs Saturday night because Purdue hosts Missouri. And no word out of the Purdue camp on who is going to be quarterback this week.
They like to say mum on that, don't
they? Yeah. Last week they at least announced that both quarterbacks would be playing, but this week he's not saying anything. So Coach Brom is going to leave us all in the dark until game time, I'm guessing. 6:30 for Purdue and Missouri, and that's on the Big Ten Network Saturday night. You look at the quarterback situation, and David Blau and Elijah Sindelar have both had their moments. They both had some moments that weren't very good this year. It's a tough call between the two. To me, if you're looking at both quarterbacks and looking toward the future, Sindelar might be the way to go because he's a junior and has another year. Blau is a senior, so he's done after this season. I think at some point, yes, it's great to have both of them, and both of them probably deserve to play. I think at some point, though, you have to make a decision. You've got to pick one and go with it. I think if you look back to last season when Blau got hurt and Elijah became the quarterback and there was no quarterback controversy or whatever, Elijah played really well those last 4 games of the year. Purdue did really well. Of course, Elijah had the crazy good game in the bowl game that the Boilermakers won. I think there's a lot, too, not looking over your shoulder the whole time you're out there. And right now, it's probably not fair to either quarterback because you're out there and, well, am I going to get this series or the next series? Am I playing a quarter?
Yeah.
Am I going to play at all? I think it just makes it easier for everybody if you just say...
Just to have that certainty.
This is our starting quarterback, and this is how we're going to roll.
And we may be a little bit biased, but I think we know which.
Yeah, I mean, we'd all like to see Elijah, but again, if they're even, I think you have to go with the younger kid because you're looking toward the future,
building them up for another year,
and that just happens to be Sindelar. So that's kind of the way I would go. If
I like it, it makes sense. You should tweet the coach. Tweet at him.
If they were asking me, I think that's the way I would go. But it's going to be a big Saturday of college football. Actually, the college football season got started early, or college football week got started earlier, I guess. There was actually a Wednesday game because of Hurricane Florence moving in. They moved a lot of games around, and Coastal Carolina and Campbell actually played Wednesday afternoon, which, I was able to sneak a peek at that game up at work on the computer. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
but
we'll just keep it between us.
That game was actually supposed to be at Coastal Carolina. They moved it to Campbell, and actually was watching that. Had a really nice facility. I was surprised because I think they just went back to Division I football in the last few years, and just weird, though, to sit there on Wednesday afternoon
and watch
college football, but I know Florence has caused a lot of games to be rescheduled or just flat out canceled, and hopefully everybody on the East Coast can stay safe, and hopefully the storm will wear down a little bit before it hits landfall, and I think eventually we'll probably see some rain off of that either maybe Sunday or Monday somewhere along the way. So
actually, I think right now it looks like it's going to curve up north.
Really?
Maybe just get eastern Kentucky, but right now the forecast, it looks great. Through next Wednesday, not a chance of precipitation now, so got some beautiful weather ahead of us.
Well, never know where those hurricanes are going to end up or go. Or,
they've changed it a few times, I think, already.
They showed one prediction map, and it was just lines going every which way, and I'm like, well...
Let's be honest, the easiest job to be is meteorologist because you can be wrong 90% of the time and still get a check.
Well, and you can just keep changing your story, and you're good, so...
You can say, well, I said that at one point at least.
But lots of sports action going on tonight. Again... Want to apologize for not getting Kevin Patton of the Henderson Gleaner on. We had him lined up and ready to go earlier, and he sounded good for about 5 seconds there.
It did. That was a very meaningful 5 seconds.
Just kind of got us out of kilter a little bit on the show this morning, but trying to make up for that and trying to make sure we mentioned everything that we had and mentioned football at Tiger Stadium Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff, and just don't forget about the 1998 state championship team that's going to be honored at halftime. Trying to get my sports schedule up here so I can make sure I don't miss anything from this week's Times Leader, available on newsstands now. Just $1, which is, cheaper than a drink.
Yeah.
Tiger soccer at home tonight, and people that enter Butler Stadium are going to notice one big change, I think. Have you all been down to the stadium lately to see anything? It's a brand new scoreboard on the side of the
actually,
Butler
I was
building.
driving through, and I kind of saw through the gate.
Yeah. So, a chance to check out the new scoreboard, and Lyon County coming to town tonight.
Always a fun game.
Lyon County and Caldwell County boys soccer tonight at Butler Stadium. That's where I'll be hanging out. The Lady Tiger volleyball team, which got a big win over Callaway County here Tuesday night, will be going to Owensboro Apollo tonight. Apollo ranked 21st in the state, so that's a big one. Lady Tigers a little disappointed with their showing up at Central Hardin over the weekend.
Queen at the Court, what was it?
Picked up
1-4. One game, one in.
But a lot of good teams up there.
Oh, yeah.
Still, Caldwell County expects to do better than 1-4, so you can understand being down a little bit. But
volleyball's always a solid program for us. So,
but a chance to, they got back on the winning side Tuesday against Callaway. Now a big
put that
test.
away in 3 sets, didn't they?
Yes, and looked pretty good in the 3. Getting it done pretty quick. Lady Tigers at Apollo, so there's a chance to pull off an upset against a ranked team. The middle school softball team, Lady Tigers, hosting Trigg County today out at the local park, so a chance to see some ball there.
Yeah, lots of good opportunity for local sports.
So I think that's about everything going on. Just get out and support your local team. Football Friday at Tiger Stadium, Henderson County. Should be another great game, and again, just the 1998 state champs will be there. We're fired up about that and can't wait for that.
Great opportunity to come out. The weather's going to be perfect. Mostly clear skies, lows around 67. You can't ask for better weather for football.
And junior pro football will be at home Saturday, so if you don't have enough football, starting at 10 o'clock, there's 4 games. All the Caldwell teams will play.
You can fill up your weekend.
I think it's like at 10, noon, 2, and 4, so if you like football and want to watch the little guys play, they'll be out on the Tiger Stadium turf Saturday afternoon. And
guess what? The weather's perfect Saturday, too. Sunny skies, highs near 88. So
it's a great time to get out and go to a ball game.
It's a great weekend for Tiger sports.
Yes.
Every weekend's a great weekend for Tiger sports.
This is a great time of year. Baseball season is winding down. We're 2.5 weeks away from finding out which teams are in the playoffs. Right now, my St. Louis Cardinals would be in as the second wild card team in the National League. Football, soccer, volleyball, everything's going on.
Keeps you busy, Todd.
Yeah, keeps me hopping, but it's fun.
All right. Well, you got anything else to hit on this morning?
I think that's it.
I think we've won it pretty good for all the technical difficulties.
And again,
that's my word of the day.
Apologies to Kevin Patton of the Henderson Gleaner. Western Kentucky, this area is really blessed as far as sports coverage goes. Some great guys. Kevin right there, does a super job covering the Henderson County Cardinals and Lady Cardinals, and I'm sure he'll be out here Friday night for the ball game just like the rest of us.
I tell you, though, I'm pretty disappointed after hearing that their newspaper's called The Gleaner. Times Leader just sounds super stuffy. I mean, who came up with that?
I'm not sure.
I think it was the Princeton Times and then the Princeton.
It was the Caldwell County Times.
That's what it was.
And the Princeton Leader. And I'm not sure how many people will remember the Princeton banner. If you remember the Princeton banner.
I've seen a few. There's still a few copies hanging around here and there.
I think it made it 2 or 3 years. At one point, we actually had 3 newspapers here at the same time. There was the Princeton Leader.
It was a happening place.
There was it was a twice-a-week Leader back then, I believe. The Times and the Princeton banner.
I know in the newspaper office we got that banner from, like 1800s or something.
Yeah, there was an old paper, and I can't remember if it was called the Banner or not. There's some older papers, and the Leader, I think, goes back a long way. The Times it's interesting because the Times was really originally the twice-a-week Times that came out on Tuesday and Friday.
Yeah.
And then, for the longest time when I was young, there were two papers, but it was two different papers that came out once a week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they combined those, and it came out one paper twice a week. So
small-town media, it's hard to keep up with.
If you go back and look at the newspapers through the year here, it's kind of interesting, though. And the great thing, and, I think Princeton's been fortunate from this aspect, is that it's always had good newspapers. At least I like to think so.
Yeah.
And
we're not biased at all.
Well, if you go back to the 20s and 30s, there was even great sports coverage back then, and the football team always got big write-ups all the way through. Even when the paper changed hands, there were always people there that made sure the community was served, and radio station's been on the air since 1950. Again, I've mentioned this before, that not every community has a newspaper or a radio station that serves them.
And we have both.
And we've got both, so Caldwell County is very fortunate to have the coverage that it gets.
Yes, we are. Anything else this morning, Todd?
I think that's it.
All right, well, we'll wrap up. That was the Sideline Report, a little delayed Sideline Report, but good nonetheless.
Well, I think we still had a good show.
Yeah, we did. Lots of information. You saw my contribution saying yeah and every time you had to pause to take a break. I feel like I contributed something to this conversation.
Everybody go to the ball game this week and next week at Tillman, and get out and watch the soccer teams, and volleyball's got home matches coming up the next few weeks. Get out and support the Tigers and Lady Tigers.
That's as good a wrap-up as any. Time now is 10:26. We're going to get off here. You've been listening to your local hometown radio station, WPKY 103.3 FM, The Tiger. Be sure to stay tuned. We're going to play you some great music. We'll be back at noon for the noon news hour with Audrey Lamb. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
WPKY, Princeton.
From the WPKY Weather Center, here's a look at the latest local forecast on 103.3 FM, The Tiger.
Today we're looking at mostly sunny skies.